case you're about to see is a fictional one, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public.
Well, then I said cheers to my mates and I left the pub quick. I ran like buggery all the way down to the bus...
Mr. Bodger, please moderate your language. This is a court of law.
Yeah, I'm sorry, miss. Well, I ran all the way down to the bus depot because the last bus for the downside estate, it pulls out at 11:15 pronto of a Sunday night, you see.
Now, when you say that you ran all the way to the bus depot...
No, what I meant was until I got stopped. I mean, stopped there in the street. I was running for the bus when these two clients came bang out of the blue and clobbered me fast.
Yes, quite. What time would you say you left the public house?
It was 10:30 on the dot, sir.
Well, how can you be so precise?
Oh, I kept an eye on the time, you see, so as not to miss the last bus back to Downside.
So you left the Coach and Horses public house in Latimer Street at 10:30, and you ran down the adjacent streets in the direction of the Fulchester bus depot?
Yes, sir, that's right.
What happened next?
Well, I was just going down Stratton Row, that's near the city centre, and I was still running, so I was out of breath, a bit puffed like, when all of a sudden, this white Volkswagen, it comes belting up the road from behind me and swings round dead in front of me. I mean, straight up on the pavement. It's truth.
Yes. Well, please go on.
Well, then these two bods would jump out of the VW and start threatening me, waving these these great truncheons about.
Now, can you identify these two men? Do you see them here in this courtroom today?
Oh, too right. Those two sat over there in the dock. Mr. Elliot was one of them, him and Len Dugdale.
And did you see which of the accused was driving the motor vehicle?
Yeah, Dugdale was.
Dugdale was driving. Now, did you know of any reason why these two men should approach you in such an aggressive manner?
Well, of course not. Not then, any road. Not until later. They just shouted a few things and then they clobbered me with these truncheons.
Yes.
Then he gets bundled into the back of this car with a sack pulled down over my head and a rope tied round me and they drive off with me struggling away in the back. Then the next thing I know, I'm shoved up some steps into this house, they pull the sack off me and I make to stand there like some naughty school kid in Mrs. Sutcliffe's sitting room.
Mr. Boyd, perhaps we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yes, I'm obliged, Your Honour. Now, in your original confrontation with these two men, the accused, Messrs. Elliot and Dugdale, did they first address you in any way? Did they speak to you before you sustained the attack? Did they ask you any questions, for instance?
Oh, they shouted at me, yeah. Well, Dugdale did at any rate.
Now, this was prior to their attack?
Yeah, right.
And did the man Dugdale say anything?
Yeah, he said something about that if I wanted trouble, then he'd be good and willing to give it to me. Trouble, that is. You want bother, he said, I'll give you bother.
Well, what did you make of such a remark?
Well, I didn't know what to make of it, didn't know what he was going on about.
Was anything else said?
Yeah, Dugdale. He asked me if I was coming quietly.
Coming quietly? Coming where?
Right, that's what I wanted to know.
And were you rewarded with an answer?
No, Dugdale, he just cushed me. Elliot told him to calm down.
Did Elliot speak to you?
No, he didn't say anything to me there, not until we got back to old Ma Sutcliffe's place.
Yes.
He just kept telling Dugdale to calm down.
Now, had you met either of these two men before?
No, sir, I hadn't.
Did you know who they were?
Oh, yeah.
You did know?
Yeah, well, Mr. Elliot, he used to be a copper down at Fulchester Nick, and everyone knows Len Dugdale.
Oh?
Well, everyone on the downside estate, that is.
Your Honour.
Yes, Mr. Lowry.
I think the witness would be more impressive if he merely spoke for himself.
Fair comment, I suppose, Mr. Lowry, but it's only a figure of speech. Let's get on. Mr. Boyd.
How were you able to identify the man Dugdale?
Well, on account of him being secretary of the council tenants.
Secretary of the Downside Council House Tenants Association?
Yeah, that's it.
Now, would it be fair to say that you were not personally acquainted with either of these two men prior to this incident?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And at what stage did you recognise them? I mean, did you identify them right away?
Oh, no.
How was that?
Well, you see, it was pretty dark and I was running and, well, I was sweating and my eyes were watering. Well, they just took me by surprise.
So as far as you were concerned, your first confrontation with Elliot and Dugdale was the approach of two unknown individuals offering threats and menaces.
Oh, they scared me right enough. I wanted to, well, who they were like.
Now, you mentioned earlier they were both carrying certain implements.
They were bloody great truncheons!
Silence, please.
Mr. Bodger, I must ask you again to restrain the temper of your language here in court.
Well, I'm sorry, Your Honour, it's just that, well, answering all these questions, it makes me remember what happened. And remembering what happened, it makes me blood boil.
I know it's difficult, but please try to answer counsel's questions directly and factually, without the embellishments. That way the trial will proceed much more quickly. Carry on, Mr. Boyd.
Your Honour, if I may introduce Exhibit 1. May the witness be shown Exhibit 1, please? Do you recognise these implements?
Yeah, they're the ones. Elliot and Dugdale, they had one each. Dugdale was mighty handy with his.
Handy in what kind of way?
Well, he clouted me quite a few times. He forced me up against the railings.
How did you respond?
Well, I wasn't very happy about it.
Had you formed any notion as to why these two men were soliciting your particular attention?
Well, yeah, I thought that they were drunk.
Drunk?
Yes.
Now, did Elliot participate in this truncheon assault?
Your Honour.
Yes, I do agree, Mr. Lowry.
Quite improper, isn't it?
Very well. Can you state which of these two individuals was specifically involved in striking you body blows with the truncheons which you have already identified as being carried by Messrs. Elliot and Dugdale on the night in question?
Well, both of them belted me with those sticks.
Both?
Yeah, Elliot and Dugdale, they gave me a right going over. They got me where it counts, they practically ruptured me.
And can you state specifically upon which parts of your person you were struck?
Well, yeah, they dug me in the gut with a truncheon and then swack, straight across the back of the neck. And friend Dugdale there, he kneed me between my legs and I caught a fist or two in the face.
And then what happened?
Well, Dugdale, he kept asking me, "Gonna be a good boy now, are you?" And then he'd belt me one and say, "Gonna come quietly now, are you?" Like he was trying to cow me, trying to get me to do something that he wanted, stuff like that. He got mighty nasty when I gave him a bit of lip. In the end, they both get to me and they shoved me in the back of the VW.
They forced you into the back of their motor vehicle?
Well, right. Elliot, well, it sounded like Elliot was in charge of it all, you see. He told Dugdale to get the sack and the ropes.
Exhibit 2, Your Honour. Could the witness be shown the sack and the rope, please? Do you recognise these?
Yeah, that's the one. Dugdale, he pulled the sack down over my head and he tied the rope round me like it was a parcel. But this rope, it had my arms pinned to my side so that I couldn't move an inch. It hurt it hurt all the time. I was shouting and struggling, but one of them, he held me down to the back of the car. I tell you, I got mighty scared when I felt that engine start and the car pull off.
Did you know where they were taking you?
Well, I'm not a mind reader exactly.
No indication was given?
Look, I was shouting and struggling inside this sack, but that just hurt me a truncheon, but hard in the guts. After about 10 minutes, the car pulled up and they forced me to get out and walk along, crouched, bent double. I can remember hearing a dog barking somewhere and some piano music playing somewhere down the road. And then they're pushing me up some stairs and we go indoors inside this house.
Now, let's be absolutely clear about this point. At what stage were you released from the sack and rope?
When we got inside her house.
Inside whose house?
Well, Mrs. Sutcliffe's house. It was her place. Mrs. Sutcliffe sat there in the dock.
You're identifying Mrs. Anne Sutcliffe?
Well, right. They pushed me indoors and then they untied the rope and they pulled the sack off from round my head. And suddenly there I am. In this posh front room with the goldfish aquarium and the grandfather clock tick-tocking away in the corner. And there's old Ma Sutcliffe. She just sat there peering at me over the top of her specs.
Were you able to identify Mrs. Sutcliffe when you first saw her in the house?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, now, could you describe exactly who was present in the sitting room?
Just one moment, Mr. Boyce.
Your Honour.
How were you able to identify Mrs. Sutcliffe? Had you met her before?
Well, I'd seen a picture in the local press, you see. Anyway, she's pretty well known hereabouts in Fulchester, anyway.
So you were able to recognise Mrs. Sutcliffe purely through having seen her photograph in the local press?
Oh, I knew she was right enough.
And your two assailants, had you been able to recognise them as yet?
Well, that took me a while, you see, Your Honour. I was dead scared. I wondered what they'd gone to nab me for and where I was. But seeing them stood there in the room, what with the electric light and everything, it was then I saw they were.
I see. Thank you.
Now, all in all, who was present in the sitting room at this time?
There was Mrs. Sutcliffe, Elliot and Dugdale, and Mr. Matthews. He came in later.
Simon Matthews will be appearing as a prosecution witness, Your Honour. Did anyone explain to you why you'd been brought to this house?
Well, Elliot, he still seemed to be in charge of it all. He suddenly pitched in, asking me all these questions.
And what was the nature of these questions?
Well, it had been all about where I'd been that night, who I'd been with, and what I was doing at the time they picked me up, all that kind of stuff. He just kept pounding me with these questions, question after question. It felt like he was some cop, and I were a suspect down at the cop shop.
You felt like a police suspect, is that what you're saying?
Well, definitely, yeah.
Now, did these questions asked of you relate to any particular incident?
Your Elliot, he kept going on about some public phone box in Stratton Row that had been smashed up. He accused me of doing it, busting it up, vandalising it. I didn't know a thing about it. He got absolutely flaming wild when I denied it.
Did Elliot explain why he suspected you in particular?
Well, Elliot and Dugdale, they've been patrolling around Fulchester in their VW, you know, looking out for trouble, gangs of kids, that kind of stuff, on account of it being August bank holiday weekend. And they claimed they saw me kicking the windows in this telephone box.
Yes, were the objectives of this patrol explained to you?
Well, yeah, they were meant to be some kind of a private police force, you know, keeping an eye out for residents' property, that kind of stuff. Sort of a vigilante patrol. And they went and nabbed me by mistake.
Well now, Mr. Bodger, this is an extraordinary story you've told us. A most remarkable sequence of events. Indeed, the mind fairly boggles at such melodrama.
Well, it's true, all of it.
Yes, well, let us see about that, shall we? Now, you say that you were running, Mr. Bodger, albeit somewhat out of breath, down Stratton Row at 10:30 p.m. on the night in question.
No, I didn't say that. I said I left the pub at 10:30.
Ah, so by the time you reached Stratton Row, it would have been what, between 10:30 and 10:45?
Oh, that's right.
Now, were there a lot of people about in Stratton Row?
Not really.
Not really? Well, did you see anyone in Stratton Row?
No, no one.
No one at all? I mean, there was nobody out walking a dog, no courting couples?
No, look, there was nobody about.
I see. So Stratton Row was completely deserted?
Well, I was running for the bus.
Ah, yes, the last bus, I think.
Yeah, so I didn't notice anybody.
Didn't happen to bump into anybody as you jogged along? Didn't trip over the odd foot or so?
The witness has already answered this question several times, Your Honour.
Very well. Now, how do you account for such a state of desolation in Stratton Row, Mr. Bodger?
Well, it was a Sunday night.
Oh, yes, of course, Sunday. Now, what time did the pubs shut in Fulchester?
It's 10:30 chucking out time on a Sunday.
I see. And the cinemas, what time do they close?
It's about the same time.
10:30?
Yeah, 10:30.
Now, Stratton Row, as you told my learned friend, is near the centre of Fulchester, is it not?
Yeah?
Near all those pubs and cinemas that'll be emptying their customers at precisely the time you were running down an empty and deserted Stratton Row.
Look, there was nobody about!
No, nobody to witness this spectacular assault with motor vehicles mounting pavements and men with wooden truncheons bent on beating up the casual passer-by. Nobody about in the centre of Fulchester on an August bank holiday Sunday evening. Remarkable.
Yes, Mr. Lowry. I think you've made your point.
Your Honour. Now, Mr. Bodger, you were out drinking, were you, on this particular Sunday evening? What was it, a pub crawl?
No, just a jar or two with my mates.
What do you drink?
Well, bitter. I always drink bitter.
No spirits? Was that no, Mr. Bodger?
No spirits.
Now, how many pints would you say you'd consumed in the course of the evening?
Look, I wasn't drunk, if that's what you're trying to get at.
3 pints, 5, 7?
6 or 7.
7 pints of beer in what, 3.5 hours? You're a man who can really take his beer, are you, Mr. Bodger?
Well, I reckon I can, yes.
You reckon you can? Can you really describe yourself as being in a sober condition, having consumed 7 pints of bitter when you left the coach and horses and ran down to Stratton Row on that night?
Yes, I can.
Tell me, Mr. Bodger, how long have you been living on Downside Estate?
Well, we were rehoused about 5 years back.
I suppose in the 5 years that you've lived on the Downside Estate, you've made a number of very good friends, have you?
I've got loads of mates on Downside.
Well done, Mr. Bodger. And no doubt these friends were amongst those drinking companions on the night in question.
Of course they were.
Of course. Yet you have given evidence to my learned friend to say that you ran down Stratton Row unaccompanied. How do you account for that?
Well, some of the lads, you see, they decided to go down to the Old Town for some fish and chips, a cup of coffee, that sort of thing.
I see, and missed the last bus. Did they walk home?
Well, not one of the lads, you see, he's got this car, so they'd have got a lift back.
But you did not feel able to avail yourself of this provision of transport?
Well, I'd had enough. I wanted to get back home.
Why? To watch something on television, perhaps?
No, I'd had a heavy week.
I suggest you were not alone when you ran down Stratton Row, Mr. Bodger. I suggest that you were with a crowd of your mates at the time.
Look, I was alone!
I suggest that you and your companions had had more alcohol than any of you could handle, and that out of boredom or malice or whatever motive, you proceeded to vandalise a public phone box in Stratton Row.
Look, that is a complete load of...
Your Honour, the witness is not on trial.
Quite so, Mr. Boyce.
I'm attempting to demonstrate an alternative version of the events on the night in question, which relate to the charges brought against my clients. If I'm permitted to develop it, Your Honour.
Yes, Mr. Lowry. It's all part of the background. I understand. And Mr. Bodger, do try to moderate your language.
I'm sorry.
Tell me, Mr. Bodger, there is there not, a sizable group of individuals known as the Downside Gang?
That's just a label. It doesn't mean a thing.
But does the Downside Gang exist or not?
I suppose so, yeah.
It does. Are you a member?
Cannot imagine it's a club, Mr. Lowry, with an annual subscription and so forth.
Do you then associate with the youths on the Downside estate who go to make up this gang?
Oh, I know them, yeah.
And would you consider yourself to be a part of the gang?
I suppose so. I've never thought on it much.
Well, think about this then, Mr. Bodger. The reputation of the Downside Gang in the Fulchester area is notorious, is it not?
Who with?
With the police, to name but one body.
I repeat, Your Honour, the witness is not on trial, and nor is the youth of Downside Estate.
Quite, but I perceive how this can be relevant. Yes, Mr. Lowry.
Your Honour. Now, Mr. Bodger, when Her Honour asked you how you were able to identify Mrs. Anne Sutcliffe, you replied that you'd seen her photograph in a local newspaper.
That's right.
Can you not recall seeing her in the flesh, so to speak, elsewhere? Namely in Fulchester Magistrates' Court. Mrs. Sutcliffe is a local magistrate, is she not? And you were brought before her on criminal charges, were you not? What was the charge upon which you were brought before the Fulchester bench?
It was vandalism.
Vandalism. What kind of vandalism?
And shoplifting.
What kind of vandalism?
Well, busting up places, public lavatories and the like.
And public telephone boxes. What sentence did you get?
6 months in Borstal.
And were you charged on your own or with others?
With others.
What others?
Mates of mine from Downside.
I venture to suggest, Mr. Bodger, that you and your friends from the Downside estate were up to your old tricks on the night in question. That you'd had far too much to drink, and you were caught in the act of vandalising a telephone box by Mr. Elliot and Mr. Dugdale.
That is rubbish!
That when your mates ran off, you alone were collared by the residence patrol, who took you back to Mrs. Sutcliffe's house with the sole purpose of telephoning the police to report their citizen's arrest of you.
Look, they went and beat me up! You saw those truncheons? Then they took me back to her place and they beat me up again!
I put it to you, Mr. Bodger, that you began the violence, both in Stratton Row and back at Mrs. Sutcliffe's house.
Well, what about the police photos then, eh? What would I be doing in hospital then, eh, if after they'd beat me up?
I suggest it was you who created the disturbance. You who offered the provocation, and you who initiated the violence.
That is rubbish!
The defendants, in fact, were acting purely in self-defense.
That is all absolute bull!
Will you please give your full name and address?
My name is Simon John Matthews, and I live at 62 Fitzgerald Crescent, Somerville, Fulchester.
And Somerville is a district of Fulchester.
It's a small suburb consisting of a number of private residential estates.
And Somerville is regarded, is it not, as the posh end of town, where the well-heeled of Fulchester reside.
Well, certainly it has that reputation.
And how many years have you lived there, Mr. Matthews?
Ever since the area was first developed, some 15 years or so ago.
And you hold an official honorary position on the local organisation?
I'm secretary of the Ratepayers Association in Fulchester.
Now, are you personally acquainted with Mrs. Anne Sutcliffe, one of the defendants?
Yes, she lives in the next road along, Churchill Way. I've known Anne for over 15 years. Her late husband was a very good friend of mine.
And are you also acquainted with the other two defendants, Leonard Dugdale and Gerald Elliot?
I know them both. Gerald I've known for over 10 years. Leonard Dugdale more recently.
Now, on the night of August Bank Holiday Sunday, that is August the 27th last, were you present at Mrs. Sutcliffe's house in Churchill Way between the hours of 9 p.m. and 1 a.m.?
Yes, I was.
And did you have a particular reason for visiting Mrs. Sutcliffe? Was it a social call, for instance?
I went there because I was really very worried. My anxiety concerned the formation of a committee of which I was a somewhat reluctant member.
Who were your colleagues on this committee?
Anne Sutcliffe. She originally brought the committee together. She was the committee's chairwoman. Gerald Elliot, as an ex-police officer, he was able to offer the committee invaluable expert advice. And Len Dugdale, I believe he originally brought the idea of the committee to Anne.
And what purpose was this committee intended to serve?
It was set up to operate a residence vigilante watch patrol, Initially, the patrol was to be an experiment over the August bank holiday period. Responsible residents were to patrol the streets of Fulchester in a private car on the lookout for troublemakers.
What kind of troublemakers did you have in mind?
Hooligans, vandals, muggers, car thieves, burglars. Fulchester has an enormous influx of visitors, mainly young people, at weekends and bank holidays. During the summer months especially, the crime rate in the town soars.
Yes. Weren't you proposing to do the police's work for them?
We simply felt that the police couldn't cope with the enormous pressure on them, so something had to be done.
And how were these patrols meant to operate?
Oh, that's where the disagreements began. The original idea was that the patrol should observe and report any trouble they saw to the police. But then I got the feeling that both Gerald and Len were becoming considerably overzealous, and I went to see Anne to tell her so.
Overzealous in what way?
Gerald spoke of giving the patrols more teeth by allowing them to deal with certain incidents and to make citizens arrest. I got the idea that Len was prepared to sanction some form of rough justice. I could see the whole thing escalating out of control, with people taking the law into their own hands. And as it happened, my worst fears were realised.
How did Mrs. Sutcliffe respond to your disquiet?
Oh, she simply said she thought I was being yellow-livered. She had implicit faith in Gerald. I wanted her to call the whole thing off that night. And of course at that time I had no idea at all about the homemade truncheons and the ropes and the sacks.
And while you were there talking to Mrs. Sutcliffe about these matters, did something happen?
Yes, it was about 11:15. I was upstairs, actually, in the bathroom. I heard a car drive up. It turned out to be Len's Volkswagen, the vehicle used for the patrols. Shortly afterwards, I heard loud voices in the hall, and I went downstairs into the sitting room, and there were Gerald and Len with the boy, David Bodger.
Was any explanation offered as to why David Bodger had been brought to the house?
Well, Gerald said the boy had been arrested for vandalism. Vandalism? He looked absolutely terrified.
And what happened next?
Well, Gerald began to question the boy. No, interrogate him, as if he were a police suspect.
How did David Bodger respond to this?
At first he was badly frightened. Then he began denying everything. This enraged Gerald, and he began hitting the boy very violently. I tried to stop it, but Len blocked me. I'm no match for...
Let's be very, very clear about this. Gerald Elliot was cross-examining David Bodger, and he hit the boy. You say he struck him violently.
It was terrible. Horrific.
Can you be absolutely certain who struck the first blow?
Yes, I can. It was Gerald Elliot. He hit the boy across the face and in the solar plexus. And then the boy responded in kind.
The case of the Queen against Sutcliffe, Elliot and Dugdale will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The case of the Queen against Anne Sutcliffe, Gerald Elliot and Leonard Dugdale continues today in the Crown Court. The defendants have pleaded not guilty to charges of assault occasioning actual bodily harm to David Bodger, a Fulchester adolescent. It's alleged that the defendants' formation of a residents' vigilante watch patrol led to the imposition of rough justice when the patrol mistook Bodger for a vandal. The defence claims that the defendants were acting in self-defence against attempted assault from David Bodger, who was resisting a citizen's arrest.
Mr. Matthews, may I remind you that you are still under oath. Proceed, Mr. Lowry.
Your Honour. Now, Mr. Matthews, this unfortunate episode of violence which visited the house of Mrs. Sutcliffe, which you described so graphically to my learned friend yesterday, what do you suppose ignited such extreme behaviour?
The boy, David Bodger, soon showed that he was not prepared to be hectored by Gerald Elliot.
Can you expand on that?
Gerald began cross-examining the boy as if he were a police suspect, but the boy told Gerald quite flatly that he'd been abducted and brought to the house by force, and he intended to make a full report to the police. He kept saying he had his rights, the same rights as everyone else, and he'd make sure that they were exercised.
And what was the reaction to that?
Gerald turned furious. He began shouting at the boy, "You louts all know about your rights these days," words to that effect. Gerald seemed crazed with rage. He began shouting very loudly about his life in the police force, how frustrating it had been. Long nights questioning council estate yobs who always knew about their rights.
Yes. Now, where exactly were you standing when this exchange took place?
Near the cocktail cabinet.
Yes, I see. And
I was trying to persuade Len and Anne to help me pacify Gerald.
And Gerald Elliot and the boy, where were they?
On the far side of the sofa, near the French window.
I see. And when did the violence erupt?
Oh, precisely then. Gerald lost control and began striking the boy across the face.
And you were in the middle of a conversation?
Yes.
So how did you know that they'd come to blows?
I heard the boy's face being slapped.
Ah, you heard the boy's face being slapped, but did not, I suggest, actually see it? Well, I put it to you, Mr. Matthews, you were heavily engaged in conversation on the far side of the room. You heard his face being slapped.
It all happened so quickly.
And did not see it.
I'm not completely sure.
Indeed, Mr. Matthews, how can you be certain that it was the first blow struck?
I don't follow.
Well, it could have been a response rather than the initial provocation.
I certainly don't see how.
Mr. Matthews, you, sir, you heard a blow being struck. A slap across the face, which is a...
I really can't accept that.
Well, that is a question of inference which the jury will decide. Now, during this outburst of violence, which you say you witnessed, did David Bodger act violently towards anyone?
No, he didn't.
Mr. Matthews, are you going to tell me that this youth from a tough housing estate merely stood there and let people hit him?
As I said yesterday, he hit out in self-defence. He kicked both Gerald and Len.
And where did he kick them?
Between the legs.
Were these kicks powerful?
They obviously hurt.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Matthews, at the precise moment that David Bodger arrived at Mrs. Sutcliffe's house, accompanied by Mr. Elliot and Mr. Dugdale, you were, as you have told my learned friend, upstairs in the bathroom.
Yes, I was.
So, at what time did you, during the course of that evening, did you first set eyes on David Bodger?
Well, when I came down into the sitting room, the boy was standing between Gerald and Len.
Yeah, and can you describe David Bodger's appearance?
He looked scared stiff.
But was he, for example, free to move around at will?
Well, they'd untied him and they'd removed the sack, but his movements were inhibited by their truncheons.
Mr. Matthews, did you witness this derobing of the sack and the ropes which David Bodger alleges were bound about his person?
I was upstairs.
In the bathroom, quite. So you did not actually see David Bodger bound with ropes or with a sack over his head?
No, I didn't.
Which means, doesn't it, that you are unable to offer eyewitness verification that David Bodger was ever bound in this way?
But the sack and ropes were lying on the floor beside him.
Mr. Matthews.
I didn't actually see David Bodger tied up with the ropes.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Matthews, while David Bodger was allegedly being beaten senseless for the second time that evening, what exactly were you doing, sir?
Len Dugdale rather prevented me from doing anything.
But was he not, according to your own evidence, participating in the assault?
Yes, he was. But he'd also succeeded in intimidating me.
Really? How did he manage to do that?
He was carrying a wooden truncheon and he was threatening to use it.
Yes, but did he actually employ any physical force against you?
He blocked my path when I tried to prevent Gerald from continuing to hit the boy. He pushed me against the wall and knocked my glasses to the floor.
Did they break?
Luckily not.
They didn't break. So, what happened next? You stood up against the wall and watched David Bodger being beaten up, did you?
I saw them both set on the boy and start to hit him with their truncheons. I couldn't stand it. I abhor violence.
So what did you do?
I was shaking. I thought I was going to be sick.
So while you were suffering from this attack of the collywobbles, all this violence took place about you?
I'm not proud of myself. But it doesn't alter the fact that the assault took place.
And where was Mrs. Sutcliffe at the time?
She remained in the sitting room.
Were you not concerned for her safety?
Frankly, no. She wasn't being attacked.
Was she not distressed?
Yes. I went into the hall to telephone for the police, and I could hear Anne in the sitting room sobbing and shouting, my home, something like that. But when I went back into the sitting room, she was attacking the boy physically. She was trying to hit him, screaming at him, the tears running down her face. The room was in a total mess, wrecked, as if a bomb had hit it. All Anne's valuable china had been smashed. It was as if complete anarchy had taken over. Gerald stood sobbing in the corner. Both the boy and Len had been injured in the fight, so I went back into the hall to telephone for an ambulance.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. That is the case for the Crown, Your Honour.
Mrs. Sutcliffe, do you serve the community in several important official capacities?
Yes, I am a town councillor, and I sit on the Fulchester.
How many years, in fact, have you been a member of the Fulchester? And how many years have you served as a magistrate?
About 15 now.
And during this long period of public life, have you become interested in the issue of law and order and familiarised yourself with its problems?
Yes, I have. My late husband first got me interested in it. As an MP, law and order was one of his principal campaign themes.
Yes. And can you describe for us your feelings on the issue?
Well, a trendish caste of mine today preoccupies itself with the predicament of the criminal, his various failures and aspirations. But I have felt for some time that things have gone too far in this direction, and not enough concern is shown for the victim of the crime, particularly a violent crime, or for the problems of the police. I think that the ordinary people in this country, that silent majority, would support my view.
Mrs. Sutcliffe, it is your view of the matter in hand which concerns us, not your interpretation of public feeling. Would you be so kind as to answer Council's questions directly and leave the rest to the popular opinion poll?
I'm sorry.
Now, Mrs. Sutcliffe, when was the idea of the Residents' Watch Patrol first mooted?
Mr. Dugdale came to see me early in summer, about the end of May, I believe. It was his idea entirely. He first suggested it.
And subsequently was a committee formed?
Yes, the three of us. I was the chairman, Gerald Elliot and Leonard Dugdale. We also asked Simon Matthews to join with us, since he was a friend, or so we thought at the time, but more especially because he was secretary of the Fulchester Ratepayers Association.
And why was this latter qualification deemed important?
Well, because it was members of this association who'd quite rightly been most vocal in Fulchester about the crime wave, this vandalism and shoplifting that always comes with the summer months. It is the ratepayer that has to foot the bill, a fact all too easily forgotten.
Yes. Now, were there a number of meetings of this committee?
Yes, 3 were held before we decided to go ahead and have a trial watch patrol over the August bank holiday period.
Now, was that decision unanimous?
Oh, yes.
And did the committee have full knowledge of the wooden truncheons, the ropes and the sack that were carried by the patrol on the night in question?
Yes, we all did.
You all did. Does that include Mr. Matthews?
Oh, yes. Simon was in favour.
That is not true. Silence in court. You cannot leave the court, sir.
Now, Mrs. Sutcliffe, did you hear Mr. Matthews remark while he was giving evidence to my learned friend that he did not know about the truncheon ropes and sacks?
He was telling lies.
What was this equipment carried for, Mrs. Sutcliffe?
Well, simply for self-defence, in the event of a citizen's arrest.
As occurred in the case of David Bodger.
Precisely.
Now, Mrs. Sutcliffe, directing your attention to the night of August the 27th last, was Mr. Matthews present at the alleged assault on David Bodger in your home?
Yes, he wanted to call the patrol off at that late hour on the second night when the car was still out on the streets, which gives you some idea of how practical he was.
Now, when Mr. Elliot and Mr. Dugdale arrived with him, what state was David Bodger in?
He was drunk.
Were his hands or arms bound with ropes?
No.
Was there a sack over his head?
Of course not.
Was he being violently handled in any way?
Not a bit. He'd been told that he was the subject of a citizen's arrest, but he came to the house of his own free will. Indeed, he was very cheerful about the whole thing. He obviously regarded it as a huge joke. These old fogies trying to take on the Downside Estate gang. He was very buoyant and cocky when he strolled in, and shortly afterwards he proceeded to beat up my colleagues and run riot through my home.
Mrs. Sutcliffe, would it be fair to say that you consider the police force of this country to be inadequate at the present time to carry out its duties?
Well, not through any maladministration as such, but it seems to me perfectly obvious.
Well, please answer yes or no, Mrs. Sutcliffe.
Well, it's not as simple as yes or no, in my view.
The nature of my learned friend's question merits a more involved answer than he would appear to require, Your Honour.
Well, it seems perfectly simple to me.
Mr. Boyce, I think Mrs. Sutcliffe should answer this particular question in her own way.
Your Honour. Mrs. Sutcliffe?
Police resources are inadequate. The police force is undermanned and underfinanced. Consequently, they are unable to cope with our ever-enlarging crime wave.
In other words, you don't think our policemen are wonderful?
On the contrary, I think the police are very wonderful indeed to put up with what they have to. I've always supported the police, as my past record will demonstrate. The criticism I made was no reflection upon them.
Very well, Mrs. Sutcliffe. But do you really consider that vigilante watch patrols cruising about our suburban streets will actually help matters?
We were a responsible group of people acting in the public interest.
Ah, that old war horse, the public interest.
But is it acting with a proper sense of public responsibility to arm civilian watch patrols with 3-foot-long truncheons and sacks and ropes? Isn't that in itself a provocative act more likely to arouse trouble than to tranquilize it?
Our patrol existed merely to assist the police, to complement them by reporting any trouble or suspicious behaviour.
Well, matters do seem to have got a little out of hand on the night of August the 27th.
That provocation did not come from any of us.
Did the police know about your committee or about the vigilante patrol? Did you tell them?
No, we did not.
Oh?
Well, our project was in an experimental stage only. We wanted to be sure of it working properly first.
But isn't it sensible to tell people when you intend giving them a helping hand, to avoid a certain confusion of aims? Isn't that usually what sensible people do?
Well, as I've said, it was still only a tryout.
So the police would presumably have been surprised to have received a telephone call from your patrol.
Any information was to be phoned anonymously to the police.
Is it not the fact, Mrs. Sutcliffe, that the reason that you didn't inform the authorities about your plan was you knew that the police would object most strenuously? They would oppose you all the way down the line. In fact, make it virtually impossible for you to operate. Because what you were proposing was unlawful.
We were not intending anything unlawful. Certainly our motives might have been misunderstood. We weren't trying to undermine the authority of the Fulchester Police. I'm a public servant as well as a private citizen. I would never have contemplated endorsing anything so unethical.
And in the light of what happened, do you now regret your decision for forming this committee?
Not at all. Something had to be done within the bounds of law to help curb this summertime crime and vandalism in our town.
Well, how is it, do you think, that your account of events that night inside your home differ so fundamentally from the evidence offered by Mr. Matthews?
I've no idea.
And are you suggesting that he fabricated this story with David Bodger to avoid a prosecution for assault?
Well, nerve was never one of Simon's strong points. I imagine he panicked.
Had he not some reason for apprehension?
No. As I've said before, nobody touched the boy.
Oh, he came voluntarily, did he? Submitted without a struggle? Came along quietly to your pleasant Somerville home to make his confession?
Well, he didn't make a confession exactly. As I've said, he regarded the whole exercise as a bit of a giggle.
But at some point, violence did break out.
Well, Gerald began asking him some questions.
Questions, Mrs. Sutcliffe?
Simple, straightforward questions. Who he was, where he lived, and then the boy suddenly became very abusive.
Yes, that was only to be expected.
He became very insulting about me and the fact that I presided at the magistrate's court where he'd last appeared. He began calling me all sorts of filthy, disgusting names. And then he accidentally, on purpose, knocked some china off a small side table, and when Gerald tried to stop the boy, he kicked Gerald between the legs.
Well, I put it to you, Mrs. Sutcliffe, that Gerald Elliot began interrogating the boy, and when he didn't get the answers he demanded, he slapped David Bodger several times about the face.
No, that's not true.
And David Bodger, having been assaulted for the second time that evening, retaliated in self-defense.
A fight broke out, certainly, a very violent fight, but it was a direct result of the boy's assault on Gerald Elliot.
How did the man Dugdale become involved in this fight?
Well, he came to Gerald's assistance. They both tried to restrain the boy.
Why, was Mr. Elliot not able to pacify the boy without additional help?
Well, the boy had gone wild, berserk. He was smashing and destroying everything. He began laying into Gerald, who was already badly hurt.
And what were you doing while all this was going on?
Well, I'm ashamed to say I hid in a corner of the sitting room. I was terrified.
Oh, come now, Mrs. Sutcliffe. Isn't it a fact that you participated in this assault?
No, I did not.
You approached David Bodger, you were screaming hysterically, you hit him?
I did not. I did not hit the boy. I didn't touch him or go near him. I was deeply grieved about my home, my poor home. The whole room was completely wrecked. I was particularly upset about a favourite frame photo of my husband, which had been trodden underfoot and smashed. The whole incident made me feel violated. Everything that Tom had left for me, built up over the years, our belongings, our private things, our home, all ruined in a few moments.
Mr. Elliot, what is your present occupation?
I'm retired. I am part-time security advisor to a variety of Fulchester business organisations, and I am also joint proprietor of a hotel in the town.
And before you retired?
I was a police officer on the Fulchester Force.
For how many years?
20 years, sir.
And for how many years in total did you enjoy employment as a serving police officer?
I was a copper for 33 years, sir.
And to what rank had you risen before you retired?
Detective Chief Inspector.
You have, haven't you, of course, appeared in this court and others on occasions too numerous to mention as a prosecution witness?
I have.
But not, Mr. Lowry, as a defendant.
Yes, quite so, Your Honour. I was merely remarking at what a familiar face ex-Detective Chief Inspector Elliot's is.
Can we get on, please, Mr. Lowry?
Your Honour. Now, Mr. Elliot, did you have occasion during the early part of last summer to discuss the possibility with Mrs. Sutcliffe of forming a residence watch patrol to operate in Fulchester?
Yes, Mrs. Sutcliffe had been approached by Len Dugdale, whose idea the civil patrol originally was. Mrs. Sutcliffe then approached me for my advice.
And what advice were you able to offer?
Well, I thought it was a good notion. It needed careful planning, and I was willing to offer the benefit of my experience. Mrs. Sutcliffe then formed a committee, and things got underway.
Why did you consider a watch patrol in Fulchester particularly desirable?
Well, each summer, crime and violence gets worse in this town, clearly. The police can no longer cope with the matter. It's a very serious problem. It was so even in my day. First, the tourists arrive, then the motorbike gangs, the hooligans and the vandals. Look at last Easter when they burned down the pavilion. Thousands of pounds gone up in smoke, and who has to pay for it? The ratepayers.
Yes, very possibly so, Mr. Elliot. But how did you think that your venture would particularly help?
Well, it was agreed between us. What was required in Fulchester was an unofficial civil patrol, one that could guard the streets and go undetected.
And did the committee finally decide upon some form of experiment?
Yes, we decided to have a trial run over the August bank holiday long weekend, the major stress period of the summer holiday season.
Now, did your first evening, which presumably would be an August bank holiday Saturday, did that pass without spectacular incident?
Well, we had occasion to question some adolescents on the downside estate.
Why was that?
Well, a crowd of them had broken into the allotments on the south side of the estate, trampling over much of the vegetation and destroying it, breaking the windows of the greenhouses. When we approached them, they were urinating over some newly planted ground.
This matter seems hardly germane, Your Honour.
It is, Your Honour, as I shall demonstrate.
You may continue for the moment, Mr. Lowry, in the hope of convincing me.
I am obliged to Your Honour. Now, Mr. Elliot, was it possible to identify this group of individuals?
Len Dugdale knew instantly who they were, well known locally apparently around the council estates as the Downside Gang.
And how did the adolescents respond to your approach?
Oh, they thought we were a great laugh. One or two of the older ones remembered me from my days as a copper, but the principal one among them was this kid I personally had never laid eyes on before, but have come to know very well over the past few months, as David Bodger.
What did he do?
Oh, he thought we were the funniest thing out since Dad's army. Kept calling Len and me a right pair of geriatrics, amongst several other things too ripe to mention here.
Did Bodger and the others seem to realise that you were a residence patrol?
Oh, no doubt about it. With Len on the committee, news travels fast around council estates.
And the following evening you had the further confrontation with David Bodger?
Well, not just with him, the whole lot were there, hanging around the public phone box on Stratton Row like it was the Dole office. It was as if they were expecting us to come by, as if they were just stood there waiting for us.
What gives you the idea that the youths were hanging around waiting for you?
Well, as soon as they saw us, they suddenly became animated and started nudging each other and pointing. Then they seemed to spring into action and suddenly started to vandalise the phone box quite deliberately, kicking in the windows, tearing out the phone equipment and scattering the debris across the pavement.
In front of your very eyes?
Well, they were challenging us. They were saying, OK, you want to take us on, you bloody try it. They were telling us straight, this is our town, so be missing. That's simple. They all ran off before we could get to the phone box. All is, that except David Bodger. He stood there like he was cock of the walk, with that kind of leer on his face that says, OK then, what you going to do about that? He was itching for trouble, that kid. It was oozing out of him. Trouble. He was out to drop someone in it that night. And he did.
The case of the Queen against Anne Sutcliffe, Gerald Elliot and Leonard Dugdale will be concluded tomorrow when the jury reaches its verdict in the Crown Court. Anne Sutcliffe, Gerald Elliot and Leonard Dugdale, members of an unofficial committee formed to organise a residents' vigilante watch patrol in Fulchester, have pleaded not guilty to charges of assault occasioning actual bodily harm to David Bodger, a Fulchester adolescent. The prosecution have alleged that the youth was the victim of an unprovoked attack by the Citizens' Watch Patrol and by Mrs. Sutcliffe at her home. The defence claim that the defendants were acting in self-defence in the face of an assault by David Bodger. The case is in its third day, and prosecuting counsel is about to begin cross-examination of the second defendant, Gerald Elliot.
Mr. Elliot, I remind you that you are still under oath.
Now, ex-detective Chief Inspector Elliot, when you were charged with this offence at Fulchester Central Police Station, did the police express any view to you as to the undesirability of civilian watch patrols?
Clearly, they hadn't liked what we'd been up to. That didn't surprise me.
You had predicted police opposition to your scheme?
Certainly.
And would you have opposed any similar venture had it been brought to your attention while you were a serving police officer?
Well, the obvious dangers are of social anarchy if every Tom, Dick and Harry takes the law into his own hands.
But quite obviously, you exclude yourself from this company.
Yes, I do, frankly, as a professional of long standing with considerable experience and knowledge of police work, which of course is why I was approached in the first place.
How is retirement suiting you, Mr. Elliot?
Well, fine, thank you, Mr. Boyce. Good of you to ask.
Do you very much miss your life in the police force?
No more than it misses me.
But it's the case, is it not, that you experience considerable frustration in doing your job in the way that you thought it should be done?
The police were made to operate with one hand tied behind their back and then given stick because they weren't getting results.
And in fact, you retired a very disillusioned man.
Well, I always spoke my mind. In the old days, I used to love my work. I was a copper through and through, your old-fashioned sort of Jack. And more recently, the job has become more suitable for a clerk. Got day weighed down with rules and procedures. Too much poncing paperwork. I see, you're quite correct for what it's worth to you. When I left the Fulchester force, I was feeling mighty brassed off.
But of course, in organising your own unofficial civilian police force, you're not bound by rules, by official procedures, by proper cautioning, and that type of boring detail.
You asking me or telling?
I put it to you, ex-detective Chief Inspector Elliot, that for you, the vigilante patrol was a sublimated form of police work.
Rubbish. Total rubbish.
May I ask, Your Honour, how long my learned friend is going to go on indulging in this paperback psychology?
How long, Mr. Boyce?
Well, I believe I've already made my point regarding this particular aspect of the witness's testimony, Your Honour.
Then may we pass along to something more specific?
Your Honour. So this operation, which was mounted, in theory at least, to curb crimes of casual violence and vandalism, ended up instituting these very extreme forms of behaviour.
Violence is never casual, sir.
I'm speaking in the sense of it being unpremeditated, sir.
And the violence that was perpetrated on that particular night was certainly premeditated.
But whose premeditation? That's the point, Mr. Elliot.
Bodger's. David Bodger's.
Oh, no doubt you're referring to this fascinating tale involving some kind of vendetta concerning a gang of youths awaiting the approach of your motor vehicle in Stratton Row that Sunday night.
Well, it's what happened. They were there.
How many youths?
5 altogether, including Bodger.
And are you suggesting that these youths stood there waiting for you by the telephone box for the whole evening up to, what, 10:40?
It was 10:35 when we turned into Stratton Row. The youths in question weren't there on 2 earlier occasions when we passed by. Obviously, they'd been off boozing.
Obviously?
I could smell the alcohol on friend Bodger's breath. He was drunk.
I put it to you, Mr. Elliot. There was no such gang of downside youth waiting poised to vandalise the phone box in Stratton Row the moment that you and Mr. Dugdale made your appearance.
They were waiting.
I further put it to you that you saw the vandalised telephone box, you saw David Bodger running in the vicinity, and you jumped to a very unfortunate conclusion.
No.
And you arrested, if I may use that term, a perfectly innocent passer-by.
He helped smash that phone box. I saw him kick in the windows.
So you and Mr. Dugdale then proceeded to beat up David Bodger with your truncheons.
Nobody touched the boy. I told him I was making a citizen's arrest. Bodger was the one who was out to make trouble. He was challenging us.
Oh? And why do you think he should do that?
Well, to prove to his mates that he's still top dog.
I see. Why were you carrying these truncheons, sacks and ropes?
Well, for reasons of self-defence.
Self-defence? A sack and ropes? Are you not a trained policeman, fit and able to look after yourself?
I'm 56, hardly a young man, nor is Len Dugdale. Oh, he's not old, not as old as me, of course, but he's not young either. And, well, these young hooligans, they can be mighty tough and vicious.
Well, who was it supplied this equipment, Mr. Elliot, these homemade truncheons and the rest?
Oh, that's Len Dugdale's department. You see, we're using Len's motor vehicle.
I'm asking about the truncheons, Mr. Elliot.
Well, I was about to add that Len Dugdale supplied the patrol with all the equipment we carried with us.
Does the witness have to be subjected to this continual hectoring, Your Honour?
I regret, Your Honour, that I find it necessary to press the witness on certain issues, but it is my right to do so.
Mr. Elliot does seem well able to look after himself, Mr. Lowry.
Your Honour. So, Mr. Elliot, what have we? After informing David Bodger that you were arresting him, he then accompanied you, did he, without any resistance to Mrs. Sutcliffe's house?
Correct.
Why?
Why what?
Well, why did you take him to Mrs. Sutcliffe's home of all places? Wouldn't the Fulchester Central Police Station have been a more appropriate location for the lodgment of a citizen's arrest?
Well, we wanted to question the boy first.
Question him, Mr. Elliot?
Yes, ask his name, where he came from. We could hardly offer up a citizen's arrest without the relevant information.
Was not the reason for not taking him direct to Fulchester Central Police Station to enable you and Mr. Dugdale to indulge in a little bit of rough justice?
If that was the case, we would hardly have taken him to Mrs. Sutcliffe's home, would we? There are many better-suited dark corners in this town, well known to me, should we have wished to participate in what you describe.
Very well, Mr. Elliot. But if you had not bound the youth with the sack and rope...
Which we had not.
As you may say, Mr. Elliot. But in that case, why was this material, together with the 2 truncheons, found scattered about the floor of the sitting room by the 2 constables when they answered Mr. Matthews' call?
Oh, we brought the stuff in from the car, and it had got tossed around during the fight started by Bodger.
Oh, you say you brought it in from the car. Now, why did you do that?
Well, we didn't like to leave the stuff on the back seat, you know, in case passers-by saw it and got the wrong impression.
So, accompanied by David Bodger, you brought this material, that is, 2 truncheons, a sack and the rope, into Mrs. Sutcliffe's sitting room.
That's correct.
I suggest that in reality the youth's top half was covered with the sack.
No,
and his body bound with the rope.
No, look, in that case, we could have been spotted if we'd done that when we took him out of the car and crossed the pavement.
What? On a quiet road late at night in a residential estate?
Well, it'd still be risky. Anyway, the whole thing's a joke. I mean, taking in some kid bundled up in sack and rope into Anne Sutcliffe's home? Why, she would never have allowed such a thing for a start.
But did she have any choice, Mr. Elliot?
So it just never came to that.
So once inside Mrs. Sutcliffe's sitting room, you began to interrogate your suspect.
He was no suspect. I watched him vandalise that phone booth, and I didn't interrogate him. I asked him a few simple questions.
Such as?
His name and address, simply that.
Didn't you start a police interview routine, able at last to vent your spleen without the restrictions of formal police procedures?
Cock and bull!
You wouldn't have said that in court whilst you were still in the force, Mr. Elliot.
Your Honour.
And when you didn't get the answers you demanded, but were in fact reminded by your prisoner of his legal rights, you entered into a violent tirade regarding young offenders who know too much about their legal rights.
Oh, I may have passed a few remarks about youthful arrogance, particularly when he started using his foul and filthy mouth on Mrs. Sutcliffe, cursing her up and down.
I suggest that you slapped David Bodger several times about the face.
The boy suddenly started swinging about, knocking china ornaments flying, turning items of furniture over, crashing into the cocktail cabinet. Look.
Two grown men attacking one adolescent hardly amounts to self-defence.
Oh, I was practically incapacitated. When Bodger kicked me, he certainly knew precisely where he was aiming. No one ever hit him with a truncheon at any time.
And yet, this act of so-called self-defence resulted in David Bodger remaining a patient in Fulchester General Hospital for how long, Mr. Elliot?
I've no information about that.
David Bodger was hospitalised for 6 days. Now, Mr. Elliot, you too remained a patient at the hospital for how long?
Well, it kept me there for 2 days, but I'm still
2 days. And do you know how Mr. Dugdale got on?
Well, he wasn't detained. They gave him a cheque out and sent him home.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Elliot, did you assault David Bodger on August the 27th last?
No, sir.
Did you strike him with truncheons or slap him about the face, either at Stratton Row or in the home of Mrs. Anne Sutcliffe?
I did not.
Did you either alone or in concert with others use any physical force against David Bodger?
Only in self-defence.
And that is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
Thank you, Mr. Elliot. That is all.
You may leave the witness box, Mr. Elliot. Mr. Lowry, do you propose to call the third defendant?
Yes, Your Honour. Leonard Dugdale is the final defence witness.
Very well. We'll adjourn now for lunch and resume at 2 p.m.
All stand.
What is your present occupation, Mr. Dugdale?
Taxi driver, sir. Well, always have been.
For how many years?
About 15 years, sir.
You don't have to keep calling me sir, you know. Just relax, answer the questions in your own way, it'll do fine. Now, Mr. Dugdale, do you currently hold an honorary position connected with a local resident?
Well, you know, meetings we held, people coming round to my home, letters coming in by the dozen, phone calls. You see, people on the estate wanted to see some action and fast.
And were these anxieties conveyed to the police?
Local law had become a bad joke.
Why was that?
Never anywhere to be seen when there's any trouble. I mean, you never, but never see a panda car on Fulchester Council estate, not unless the beggar's gone and lost his way home.
So then, presumably, you came up with this plan of yours?
No, it got suggested to me.
By whom?
Well, a number of people on downside came up with this same notion, you know, what about some kind of civilian police force just for the estates, like? Keep it secret, sort of our own private army, deal with any troublemakers ourselves, you know, nudge, nudge, a touch of rough justice, and we can keep the law out. Not that they'd ever be in it anyway.
And what did you think of that?
Well, I thought, you know, there's a load of bother looking up here. I mean, once that sort of business gets going, there's no telling where it might lead.
Quite. So it'd be fair to say, would it, that you were opposed to any patrol that was ill-considered, whose aims were irresponsible?
Yeah, well, I reckoned if it had to be done, it had to be done properly, you know, organised by people who knew what they were doing. So I went over to see Mrs. Sutcliffe at Somerville to see what she thought about it.
And what did you say to Mrs. Sutcliffe?
I said, people are getting bothered, people are getting angry, you know, there's going to be trouble and something's got to be done. And she agreed.
And as a consequence of that, was a committee formed and an experimental patrol scheduled?
Right.
Yes.
Well, I mean, first off, I thought they were just, you know, sort of pussyfooting around, you know, all the talk and the meetings at Mrs. Sutcliffe's, but then things got going and we started patrolling the town in my old battered VW. It's funny, really, because Somerville people don't normally mix with downside types.
No, quite. Now, Mr. Dugdale, concerning the events of the night of August the 27th, did you recognise David Bodger when you first saw him in Stratton Row?
No, not at first. Well, it's not well lit, that street, and he was in amongst a bunch of other kids, so I didn't realise it was Bodger till we got out of the car and walked over to him.
So how did you eventually recognise him?
Well, we chatted to him and his mates the previous evening on the south allotment on the downside. They'd been very busy filing up the allotments there, but I knew him any road.
You knew David Bodger. Now, how was that?
Well, he's famous on the downside. Famous.
Yes, but in what sense is he famous, Mr. Dugdale?
As a troublemaker. He's always there, is David Bodger, if there's any bother about. Right at the centre, that kid. So, you see, it wasn't a surprise when I saw him that night, exactly.
Now, you say he was with other youths?
Yeah. They were smashing up a public phone box on Stratton Row. Kicking all hell out of it, they were. And then they all ran off as soon as we got out of the car and walked over to him. All except Bodger, that is.
And why do you suppose David Bodger remained behind?
Well, because he's like that. Cocky as they come, scared of nothing, that lad.
Did he have any good reason to be scared, Mr. Dugdale?
Well, no. Not of us.
Did he recognise you personally, Mr. Dugdale?
Yeah, of course he did. He knows me, I know him. In fact, he asked Mr. Elliot and me if we were a couple of old puffs riding around in the car together.
Did he appear surprised to see you?
No, not a bit. It was as if he was sort of expecting us, you know, were waiting for us, as if it was some kind of trap.
Did you speak to him?
No, Mr. Elliot did all the talking. He said he was going to make a citizen's arrest and would Bodger come along.
And how did David Bodger react to that?
He laughed like a drain. See, he was well plastered at the time, you see.
Now, Mr. Dugdale, did you strike David Bodger with the truncheons that it was alleged you were carrying?
No, sir. I mean, I easily might have done, if it so happened I was carrying the truncheons, but you see, Mr. Elliot told me to leave them in the car with the rest of the other stuff.
Now, did you threaten David Bodger with trouble or bother unless he came quietly along with you and Mr. Elliot?
No, Mr. Elliot was in charge of this. He was the experienced one when it came to this sort of thing. He just told me to calm down and take it easy when I gave Bodger some of my mouth.
Mr. Dugdale, would you describe yourself as a man of violent disposition?
Well, no more so than the next man.
It's true, is it not, it was your responsibility to provide the watch patrol with the equipment that it carried?
That's right.
And that equipment included, presumably, the 2 wooden truncheons?
That's correct.
Where did you obtain such instruments?
Well, I made them up in my back shed.
Oh, you made them up yourself? I imagine an instrument so designed could crack a man's skull open if used with that intent.
Well, I mean, they're only lumps of wood, aren't they? That's all they are.
Look at your truncheons, Mr. Dugdale. They're 3 feet long, aren't they?
2 or 3 feet, I reckon.
And how thick? 3 inches?
I don't know.
Well, you made these weapons allegedly for self-defense. And you still maintain that you're not a man of violent disposition?
Well, the committee agreed we should carry them, so I made them up.
Yes, I have no further questions, Your Honour.
Unless Your Honour has any questions, that is the case of the defence.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the nature of this case is such that there has been much discussion about the moral, social and neo-political issues associated with the question of the enforcement of law and order. A very controversial subject. But I must tell you that however much some of you may sympathize with the action of the defendants in this matter, that is not the principal subject with which you are concerned today. The defendants are charged with assault, occasioning actual bodily harm to David Bodger. That, nothing more, nothing less. Did the defendants assault David Bodger on the night in question, or did they not? Remember that the prosecution must prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt. If you have such a doubt about any charge, your verdict must be not guilty in respect of the person or persons to whom the doubt relates. Let us look briefly at the case. There are two conflicting accounts of the incidents which occurred on the night of August the 27th. Which do you believe? David Bodger's or the defendant's? Can the evidence of Simon Matthews be completely relied upon? To what extent, if any, is Mrs. Anne Sutcliffe implicated in the assault? For it is important to consider the role of each defendant separately, ladies and gentlemen, although they have been charged in concert. The first kind of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, relates to the so-called citizen's arrest and the alleged assaults in the street. And let me say at once that Mrs. Sutcliffe is plainly not guilty of this offence, and I will enter such a verdict on your behalf. Do you agree? The next point is this. The accused say this was a citizen's arrest of someone they, with reasonable cause, thought guilty of the arrestable offence of criminal damage, and that the boy, Bodger, submitted to the arrest without a struggle. Unless you are satisfied that is untrue, Elliot and Dugdale must be found not guilty. If, however, you are satisfied that Bodger's story is true, you may think that they are both guilty. As to the second account, this relates to the violence which undoubtedly took place in Mrs. Sutcliffe's house. All three are charged. Mrs. Sutcliffe says she used no violence and did not agree to violence being used. That is a good defence, unless it is untrue. Elliot and Dugdale agree they used violence, but they say they used only reasonable force in self-defence. That also is a good defence, if it is true. If, however, you decide it is untrue, then you must find the defendants, separately or together, guilty.
The defendants will stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
Yes.
On the first count of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, do you find the defendant, Gerald Henry Elliot, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the same count of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, do you find the defendant, Leonard Keith Dugdale, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of assault, occasioning actually bodily harm, do you find the defendant, Anne Helen Sutcliffe, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, do you find the defendant, Gerald Henry Elliot, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of you all?
Yes.
On the second count of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, do you find the defendant, Leonard Keith Dugdale, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Is that the verdict of you all?
Yes.
A chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch another case in the Crown Court.